Hello, everyone. Welcome to Career Circle's workshop, Networking Strategies for Job Seekers. I'm excited to have you here as we dive into effective ways to build and grow your professional network. Whether you're exploring a new industry or looking to advance in your current field, today's session will provide you with practical tips to help you make meaningful connections and open new doors in your career. We are currently recording this webinar to ensure accessibility for all participants. You can also enable closed captioning via your browser. We recommend using Google Chrome, where you can click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, click on Settings, and then Accessibility. You may refer to the screenshot in the presentation, reference a breakdown of instructions on how to access closed captioning on different browsers in the content section to your right, or reach out to one of our esteemed Career Circle employees in the tech support booth in the lobby to assist you. All of the resources that we discussed today and more can be located in the content tab near the people and discussion feed to your right. All resources and the recording will be emailed to you after the event. I'm going to repeat, all resources and the recording will be emailed to you after the event. Please make sure to watch until the end, as our amazing panelist has a wealth of knowledge to share. Before we get started with introduction, here's a QR code for our survey. You can open it on your phone and share your feedback with us. We'll be doing a raffle with all respondents, and one of you will win a Career Circle tote bag. All right, y'all, I don't even have that yet. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Please make sure that you're providing us with your feedback. The winner will be contacted next Tuesday, July 22nd. If you miss it, no worries. We'll send the survey in our post-event email too. But if you want to give us your thoughts during the event, we'd love to hear from you. Now, with that being said, I am Brittany Knowles. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have on a cat-eyed, wide-brimmed clear glasses and a natural hairstyle, as well as a smile. And I would love it, absolutely love it, Ethan, if you would introduce yourself to this viewing audience that we have the pleasure to be able to have on today.
Hey everybody, very glad to be here. My name is Ethan Parker. I'm the digital recruiting manager here at Career Circle. I am a Caucasian male in my 30s. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I have short brown hair, silver framed glasses, and like Brittany, I'm also wearing a big smile right underneath. I'm excited to be here and talk all things networking.
Awesome. So, with that being said, amazing. We're super excited to have you to join this conversation. We're going to begin by outlining what networking is and why it matters for your job search. Ethan, please go on ahead and talk to us about this.
Sounds great. So as far as networking goes, the definition of networking by itself, and it's listed here on screen as well, but it's the process of building and nurturing professional relationships in order to exchange information, support, and opportunities. Networking really fundamentally is not that different from what you would call like making friends. In a lot of cases, it comes down to your relationships with individuals as opposed to just strictly the context that you know somebody in. And so in those cases, a lot of the time, it relates a lot more to how you communicate with others. And so it's different from person to person. There are some things where you might be more comfortable networking, some settings where you may be less comfortable. Idea of today is to give you exposure to all of the settings where you may leverage networking skills, and then kind of give you some best practices on how to get into those situations. As far as why networking is really important, a study from Educational Partners UMG or UMBC found recently that over 70% of jobs are found through networking. In a lot of cases, this can come through, of course, who you know from your professional career up to this point, but it can also be part of who you know through your personal network as well. In a lot of ways, it can help to access for that personal network part specifically. You can access opportunities that may not be otherwise available or like readily posted. Let's say you know a person who works at an organization, they recently had an opening come available on their team, but that position isn't necessarily being hired for because the person that was in that role only recently left. They may be able to give you the heads up on it, share your experience with their manager, and sometimes those positions can be filled before they even make it to the public. So it's just a great way to kind of get to opportunities that you would not see otherwise. And then, of course, networking can help to build credibility and visibility in your industry, especially in spaces where you are continuing to grow. Maybe you're stepping into leadership or some kind of project management space. That takes a lot of time to build out a network and make it so that whenever you are posting things on LinkedIn, et cetera, you get a little bit more visibility and traction on those kinds of posts. And so when we think about networking, we kind of bucket into several different things. You'll see here listed on the graphic, we have kind of your professional network listed as the main bucket. And then your three subsections of that are kind of your operational networking, personal networking, and then strategic networking. Operational networking are going to be people that you are working with currently. So think your boss, fellow workers, peers, possibly even clients in the event that you are in a client-facing role. It's basically anyone that you would touch in a day-to-day experience while you are working in your current position. In the event that you're not working and you're going through kind of any kind of educational curriculum, whether it be higher education or certification, it might be the people who are actively going through a certificate program with you or actively going through getting your degree with you. It's really heavily dependent on where you're at in your professional journey, but basically it's the people that you are engaging with daily in a professional capacity currently. Personal networking, this is kind of your widest bucket, so to speak. They'll be really anybody that you have met with personally and connected with personally, whether it be via any kind of hobbies that you're interested in, any kind of like things that you've investigated online, social media spaces, things like that. This is where you can really kind of connect with people more individually and share more of your personality and make lasting kind of connections to both serve you both in ways that are both professional and personal, right? People that you would kind of share your life with generally. Strategic networking, this last bucket here, these will be people who can kind of help you or help to achieve and influence your long-term career goals. So these will be people who maybe have been in the space that you're interested in a very long time, or kind of a wealth of knowledge, and people that you would find that you would be asking more questions of as they get to as you get to different stages of your professional career. Think like mentors, industry leaders, people who maybe are well respected in the space, maybe not necessarily the most, they don't always have to be like incredibly prolific people, but it can be people that you have seen on LinkedIn and things like that, and that you generally respect their opinion. There are various ways to approach these kinds of these situations when it comes to networking. The tone, your content, the mode of outreach, those will all change based off of the relationship type that you have with the person. And so it's very, very important to make sure that you are tailoring that outreach to your connection and your individual connection with that person. Let's say you're just trying to connect with folks ad hoc on LinkedIn, that conversation will look very, very different compared to somebody that you know in real life that maybe you see every week or weekend, that you engage in hobbies with, all that kind of stuff. So just a little different in that regard. And so breaking it down in a different way, there's obviously a couple different kinds of networking now in the age of information. You might have a more opportunity to engage with a local presence based off where you're geographically located in the United States. But now there's also this, several online spaces where you can really get yourself out there, try to connect with like-minded individuals, and try to get with people that, again, occupy the space that you're interested in getting into. And so online networking is kind of your things like your LinkedIn, Twitter, social media spheres. And this also includes professional forums. So if you've recently completed a Google Career Certificate, there are also forums, things like that you have access to. And then, of course, virtual career fairs. Great example is we are actually hosting a career fair later this week. Great opportunity to get in and meet with recruiters in various groups of organizations, including some from Career Circle directly. The big benefit to online networking is that you have much easier time accessing an audience that you wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And what I mean by that is your reach extends well beyond the scope of like your local presence, and just your ability to influence others is a bit more determined by what you have to say as opposed to the connections that you've already been able to establish with the person. It's really helpful for building a digital presence. Of course, we talked a little bit about influence in the prior slide. As you kind of build that visibility and that influence, it makes other people kind of gravitate towards you, especially as they start to see you occupy more of a specific lane in the space. More traditional like networking that has been the case up to a certain point would be that offline networking. So think like conferences, industry events, on-site career fairs. If there are workshops, things like that for the given skill set or discipline that you are participating in. But even now, a lot of times offline networking still has some level of online presence. When we think about these kinds of events, they kind of get facilitated through some kind of online scheduling. And in a lot of cases, they are even posted about on social media. So things like Facebook may have, especially if you're in some kind of group that is tied to a specific upskilling curriculum, they might be posting about networking events that are happening in given geographic locations. So in a lot of times, you will still be leveraging an online system to engage in offline networking. But that said, offline networking does lend itself really well to more personal connections. It's always different seeing a person face to face and finding common ground with them and really establishing rapport in that way. It helps we as people, it helps you to kind of stick in other people's mind a little bit more. And so as a result of that, you will oftentimes get more meaningful follow-up. Not to say that you won't have very meaningful follow-up off the back end of an online networking event, but especially if you have like had the opportunity to have a conversation occupying the same space in like a physical environment with a person, usually those connections are well established and last for a very long time. I do have it listed here as well, and I think I touched on this a little bit, but you will end up combining both methods generally. Even beyond there being like a well-rounded strategy, it's kind of unavoidable in the world that we live in now. They're both so thoroughly intertwined that you will end up touching both of these in some capacity as you engage in any kind of networking strategy. So as far as that online networking piece, obviously one of the higher profile platforms that you would use for this would be LinkedIn. It's very important to make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile in the event that you are going to be engaging in any kind of networking, mostly because even beyond the scope of any kind of offline networking event, people want to stay in touch. And again, to the prior point, most of the time that comes through follow-up and digital engagement, et cetera. And so in order to leverage LinkedIn effectively, we've got a couple steps listed here that are great, like starting advice or even intermediary advice, given that you might have already a profile set up and you may not be leveraging some of these tips already. Of course, first and foremost, we want to optimize the LinkedIn profile. So making sure that you are using a professional photo. And when we say professional photo, not necessarily meaning that you paid somebody to take a picture of you, but just a picture of you dressed in professional attire. Making sure that you are representing your best self in a professional setting will go a long way towards making you a bit more approachable in online settings. And then, of course, a compelling headline goes a long way towards making it so that people understand what you do very quickly. It's more important in a lot of cases to have that headline be succinct but meaningful. And so what I mean by that is making sure that you target it to the audience that you are trying to connect with on LinkedIn. In the event that you are going into IT support, I wouldn't have a extended headline talking about all of my hobbies tied to IT support. I would have it be focused on my professional experience, what qualifies me to be an IT support professional, and then more to the point, what makes me compelling to continue to network with. Of course, As a follow-up to that headline, you'll want to make sure that you write a strong summary that highlights your skills, but more importantly, your goals, especially with digital presence and online networking. The goals go a long way towards helping people understand what you're looking to network with them about. And it's helpful from both a peer and like a mentor-esque perspective for people to understand what you are looking for in a lot of cases before they might even engage with you directly. Continuing to engage actively, of course, is also very relevant. Making sure that you post is semi-often. It doesn't necessarily have to be posting, but you can engage with material that has been posted as well. So sharing industry content that is relevant for whatever you're seeking. That's a great way of making sure that there's continued like visibility and activity coming from your profile. So would highly recommend that in the event that you're not really much into posting. Sharing is just a couple clicks. It makes it so that people can clearly see and understand what you're interested in and what you're following personally. And again, kind of gives them a sense of, what you are tackling from a professional capacity. But engaging more to the point and commenting on those posts will help people to kind of get a sense for maybe how you articulate yourself and how you position yourself as a professional. Of course, there are also the avenues of joining groups and following those key organizations in the space that you're targeting. The groups are a great, great tool for networking specifically, mostly because they give you the opportunity to, one, of course, meet with peers, but in a lot of cases, those groups also have people who have been in the space for longer and can kind of serve as pseudo mentors in a way. Whether it's, you're brand new to the space and you're looking at somebody who is kind of junior to mid-level professional, or there's people who have been obviously in the space for more of in a senior level capacity and have been there for like, call it 5+ years. It's just a great way to kind of get access to a litany of experience that you may not have had access to otherwise. So highly, highly recommend checking out groups, things like that, just to see if you can find like-minded individuals and either pick their brain or share in the job searching capacity with them. Leveraging existing relationships. We talked a little bit about this with those personal relationships that we'd established previously. Making sure that you take the time to try to reconnect with either colleagues, classmates, or mentors can go a very long way towards expediting your job search, mostly because, again, having that personal connection with somebody really makes it so that you stick in their mind in a lot of ways. And so if you've worked with somebody or again, occupied physical space with them and had great conversations, usually those people are kind of your cheerleader number one in a lot of cases when it comes to getting you a new opportunity. And they're much more likely to think of you if they know that you're actively looking and they see you routinely posting and engaging on LinkedIn. Continuing to keep your network updated goes right in hand with that, of course. Making sure that you are letting folks know, like, hey, I'm still seeking opportunities. Have we found anything? Do you know of anything? Any way that you can kind of point me in the right direction? That's a great way to kind of stay engaged with folks, make sure that they understand that you're actively on the market. And more to the point, makes it so that they stay around or you stay around in their head passively as they think of opportunities or notice opportunities in their day-to-day experience. And then last piece here is identifying those influential people in your field. Some of this is very easy and some of it's a little bit more complicated. A lot of times this can start with what organizations you're interested in and then just identifying key personnel that have been there for a long time. They'll typically be sharing great insights, a great understanding, so you can get a more scope into how certain projects are going or things like that. But some things that kind of go under the rug and maybe are equally useful, if not as directly informative about an organization, would be like thought leaders and recruiters. In a lot of cases, they can kind of give some insight as to what they're seeing in the job search, of course, but seeing from the labor landscape, but more to the point, they will be able to kind of share at a high level what opportunities they're coming across, and you'll gain visibility to that passively, as opposed to having to be so active with seeking new opportunities. Continuing to attend those virtual events, meeting those industry insiders, is another great way of identifying those people, mostly because they'll be keynote speakers, panelists, things like that. And they're great. It's a great way to just kind of identify folks who, one, have been in spaces that you want to be in for a while and have some level of insight, and two, have the ability to kind of be an amplifier of your voice in the event that you engage with them and you have a great conversation with them. So there's several ways that we highly recommend that you continue to leverage LinkedIn. It's a great tool. Making sure that you keep it up to date and ensuring that you are staying active on it is very, very important in today's day and age from a job searching perspective. So nitty gritty stuff here. As far as building the new connections, we're talking kind of like ground up from zero. Um, Obviously, things have a pretty natural flow to them most of the time. You'll want to approach the person, kind of give them an understanding of yourself, what you're looking for, and kind of initiate that conversation in a way that doesn't seem so transactional. So it's not like, hi, I'm a job seeker. I'm looking for a job. Do you have jobs for me? It's more of, hi, I'm a job seeker. I'm looking to learn a little bit more about the space so that I kind of know what to expect from my job search. Are there any tips, tricks, things like that that you may have for me? Again, it's more invested in maintaining that relationship in the long term as opposed to a like, what can you do for me right now kind of conversation. And then, of course, as you build connections, a lot of it is about the follow up and maintenance of that connection. So just making sure that you continue to stay engaged with that person beyond the scope of what you had the initial conversation about. One, again, helps to make it less transactional and more personable. Two, will generally yield greater results in the long term, especially as you find that first job. They usually will have opportunities. You continue to talk with them over time, may have another job that is more well suited for you later on in your career. So just making sure that you maintain those connections. But as far as initially, you want to take the time to research them, take some time to understand kind of what their journey has looked like, how they kind of got to the space that they're in. This is talking specifically more along the lines of online outreach. Now, you can research people in a professional capacity while you're speaking with them by just being very curious and asking a lot of questions about their work experience. But a lot of what we'll talk about here from this space will be from that online networking piece. Personalizing that outreach, mentioning like mutual connections, any events that you've seen them at or content that you've seen them put out. It can help to make it seem a little less staccato or robotic. And again, just makes it a little less transactional, right? It gives them some insight as to like, I found you through XYZ means. I really value what you have to say. I'm really interested in getting to know you better, maybe asking a couple questions about what your experience has been with XYZ thing, right? And it helps in a lot of ways to, again, reinforce that you're not just like, what can you do for me right now? And more that you're interested in like networking with them over a larger span of time. And then, of course, keeping those messages brief, friendly, and purpose-driven. It's very easy to just kind of dump a lot of context on somebody and send them a paragraph of stuff. And the unfortunate reality is, in a lot of times, these people are also busy. They're just like the rest of us, right? They may have other obligations, things like that. So the more concise that you can be and like purpose-driven with your messaging, the better results that you'll have with this kind of online outreach. But to the point, it's still, you want to make sure that you keep it kind of light. Don't make it so transactional and so purpose driven to the point where it's not like a dialogue, if that makes sense. Initiating those conversations, you want to make sure that you ask open-ended questions specifically. And just to define that a little bit more clearly, open-ended questions are questions that could not be answered strictly with a yes or no. They're questions that leave room for interpretation for the person to kind of elaborate on an answer a little bit more thoroughly to give you the most context possible. And more to the point in this case, it is a question that encourages dialogue in a back and forth capacity. So a question that's an example of a closed-ended question would be, do you have any jobs for me? That's like yes or no, right? And they might add some additional things behind it, but it's yes or no, and it from like a core like answer standpoint. A question that is more open-ended is, hey, I noticed that you've been working with this organization for a very long time. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it's like to work with this company? And so that's where they can really offer a lot more insight. You can gain a lot more information and get a more greater understanding of what it means to be an employee in this given sector at this given company. Um, the important part of this, and we said it a little bit ago, is making sure that you are curious. Listening more than you talk is one thing, but it's very much about active listening too, right? So, in the event that you are having the conversation with somebody and they mention something that is of specific interest to you in the process of answering one of your questions, take the time to catalog that and ask a follow-up question about it, because in a lot of cases that next layer of curiosity is what will help the um, one, the conversation flow very organically, but two, makes the conversation stick out in the person's mind a little bit more. And then of course, still share yourself, right? Again, the idea is to make it so that this is a long-term connection, not just like a transactional thing. So share a little bit of yourself. Talk about your personal interests, what you're targeting, not in a way that you're like selling yourself, so to speak, but in a way that you would share it with like family, friend, a peer, things like that. Give the person something to kind of latch on to in the conversation. That way, you two can have an open dialogue or an open back and forth. And then this last piece, the follow-up part, making sure that you follow up, thanking them for their time is very, very important. Again, it is one of those things where it can kind of make or break whether this becomes a long-term connection or if they stay invested in your success as a person as well. And just it's general etiquette, of course, just to make sure that you thank people for their time when you are, taking time out of their day to kind of pick their brain, things like that. So thank you message within 24 to 48 is always recommended here. Making sure that you reference the conversation specifically, again, just to avoid it being kind of robotic. Because at the end of the day, again, we're all people. If you wouldn't like to receive a message that's just like, hey, thanks, appreciate it. I'll keep looking at it, or I'll keep looking at whatever you're saying. If you wouldn't appreciate that after you took out a couple, hours of your day to talk with somebody, it's a very high chance that they wouldn't appreciate it either, right? So as always, it's the golden rule, right? Treat others how you want to be treated. Make sure that you take the time to reference that conversation, talk about things that you had mentioned in that, and then just make sure that you stay in touch over time. That staying in touch can be in a lot of different capacities as well. You can shoot them a quick note about some level of success that they attained recently. Maybe they got promoted at work. That's always great. Touching base on that, you can also just share content that they are working on or that they post routinely. Let's say that they're a person who puts a lot of content out onto LinkedIn. Sharing that is a great way to just show that you're still monitoring them and kind of keeping tabs over time.
Ethan, if I can interrupt you for two
Yeah,
shakes of a lamb's tail, I want to first ask those that are in the audience, please feel free to take heed to these comments and these suggestions that are being made by the guru himself, none other than Mr. Ethan. And one of the ways that we can do that now is by putting your LinkedIn link into the chat so that we can all connect and network with each other. You never know how we might be able to support each other in the future. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Ethan is a world renowned expert in this space. And so I know that some of you have already taken advantage of putting some questions in the chat, but you absolutely, if you have not already done so, please make sure that you are putting a question in the chat. If we have time towards the end, we will absolutely get to those. All right. And then lastly, we are going to address some of those questions now at the midway point, and then we'll do the rest of the QA at the end. Is that okay with you, Ethan?
perfect.
All right. So question number 1, how can I turn a casual conversation into a professional opportunity?
Great question. A lot of that comes from a base level of being curious. So there are natural conversations that you'll have where you just ask people, a little bit more about what they do for work, that kind of stuff. That's always a great segue into how you can leverage this person possibly as a network connection in the future. So let's say that you just meet myself. You were to ask me a little bit more about what I do. And I share, a little bit more about my job here. I'm a digital recruiting manager here at Career Circle. I've been in the recruiting space now for about 7 years. Have worked with everybody from all walks of life, helped them to land roles in general production, the call center, that kind of stuff, all the way up to senior level engineering roles. So I've seen a lot of different things. And so in those, as I'm describing the work that I do and what my background to that, you'll want to latch on to specific things to ask follow-up questions about, kind of how we outlined previously. If you ask follow-up questions, it can, one, obviously help you to understand how this person can better, be a connection for you in the future and maybe be an amplification of your voice as a job seeker. But two, it makes the conversation a bit more personable and just helps it so to make it so that the person becomes a little bit more invested in you, conversely, in a lot of cases. So if you were to ask me a lot of follow-up questions, my natural next question as we're talking about work is, hey, what are you doing for work right now? In the event that you're not working, it's a great way for you to kind of talk through where you're at in your professional journey, right? So let's say you recently completed a cert, you can kind of talk about the process of what it took to complete that, the kind of things that you touched on, what you found most interesting about that certificate, and what you're really looking for right now. In a lot of cases, the person will kind of it's about like laying seeds, right? And then eventually you reap those seeds when the person does find an opportunity that you've said, hey, yeah, this is the kind of thing I'm looking for right now. So it's all about the short answer to the question is asking a little bit more about what the person does for work and having a dialogue following that. The longer answer is making sure that you are engaging in active listening and then sharing enough about yourself and what you're targeting to make it so that person can keep an eye out for you.
Absolutely. Okay. My next question is it better to focus on quality or quantity when building a network?
Great question. It depends on where you're at in your career in a lot of cases. And the advice changes also based off of what you're targeting. So let's say you are in the tech sector and you have had some level of experience. A lot of times, quality is much more important. So who you know, how long you've known them, how well you know each other, and how they trust you. That the quality of engagement goes a lot further when you are kind of like a mid-level, like junior to mid-level professional. And definitely that applies like 10x when you're a senior level professional. The junior, like junior to entry level professionals, in a lot of cases, quantity, if you don't have a network, right? Like if you haven't really built anything up, getting those connections and those feelers out can sometimes be a little bit more important. Just to make sure that you begin to build that over time and you kind of have a strong foundation of folks that you have connected with from the onset.
I love it. And I think we have time for maybe one more.
Okay.
And that question is, how do you offer value to your connections, especially when you're the one job searching?
Great question. The best way that you can offer value to your connections, specifically like in the event that you are leaning on them to kind of be an advocate for you in your job search, is by being what's the best term for it? You'll be transparent and share yourself in a way where it's clear that you are leaning more on them than they are on you at that stage, but it's implicit that you would do the exact same for them. So it's about building an authentic connection at that point and making it so that the person that you're speaking with is also invested in your success. That's the best way that I could really represent that. I think to some extent, especially, this is how all human relationships are, right? Everyone goes through ebbs and flows in relationships where one party leans more on the other person, and it's just kind of implicit that you'll pay it forward, and the person will kind of collect on that favor, so to speak, later on, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's less so about the value that you can add immediately and more so about the value that's intrinsic in building human connections over time. Some people may not see as much value in that. Oftentimes they have a harder time with networking. But there is a lot of value just in who you know over a longer span, and people who are senior in the space generally have kind of determined that value. So anyone that you would lean on really to be an advocate for you, I think, would be very open to that kind of dynamic.
Thank you so much, Ethan, for allowing me to interrupt you for a pause for the cause. All
Love the
right.
question.
You have the floor. I'll be back at the QA mark.
Lovely. And so a lot of the next several slides here are a little bit more straightforward. There's a little less density. The networking strategies that you'll engage in will vary pretty significantly based off of the type of person that you're trying to reach out to and trying to engage with. A larger company will look at like a Microsoft or an Apple or something like that. It's very important to be much more purposeful and targeted with your outreach. So you wouldn't want to go to like Tim Cook, right, as a CEO of Apple to like connect and try to build a connection necessarily. You can absolutely do that, but your likelihood of success so that like a Tim Cook would contact you and follow up with you is just a lot lower. What you would want to do is identify the area that you are most interested in working in Apple. Let's say they've recently posted a job, and you are, trying to figure out who is working in that space. Take the time to kind of learn a little bit more about the organizational directory for the company and learn about who is touching that body of work, just to try to get an understanding of the actual landscape of the position. Those people will be a lot more boots on the ground. They'll be able to be a much stronger resource for you from a networking capacity. And more to the point, it's a much higher likelihood that you will be able to successfully connect with them and kind of pick their brain, so to speak. The flip side of that would be smaller companies. It's a lot easier in those cases to kind of reach the higher profile players or people who are like senior leadership. And in these cases, those people will often be the person that is best to get in contact with, especially in like a startup environment. It's a lot better to learn more about how the company was founded, what their mission statement is, what kind of success they've been able to find, and just try to connect and be able to monitor that organically over time. So I would highly recommend in smaller company scenarios identifying who those higher profile or maybe senior leadership folks are, and trying to either connect with them or just follow them over time to learn a little bit more about the org. And so, as far as your personal, like what you can hold in hand before a networking event, making sure that you take the time to get yourself in order and fully research the companies that may be in attendance for an event, and then of course making sure that you're prepared to articulate, who you are, because at the end of the day, it's equally important to make sure that you give the other person something to bite onto, as we mentioned previously. The former part of that, researching those attending companies, is very, very important. Making sure that you take the time to get a greater understanding of what companies will be at this event, the industry that they occupy, and maybe key projects that they've been working on, any news articles that they've been a part of, or any major PR statements that they've been involved with recently. Excuse me. As far as opportunities that are available with that company, are there jobs that you are interested in? Are there jobs where you're trying to identify key personnel that might be at this event? If there are programs that match, what you're looking for, call it like any kind of initiatives that support veterans, or in the event that you are more entry level in a given space, if they do any kind of returnships or apprenticeships, those are great ways to kind of identify, opportunities that the person you talk to may not necessarily be tied to, but are aware of it. You can kind of ask them questions about it. And then, of course, lastly, if you want to identify that the company's values and mission statements align with, you as a person and as a professional, it's more important in today's day and age that you are equally happy to work at a company as they are equally to have you as an asset for the company. So making sure you take the time to heavily research those organizations is very, very important to have a successful networking event. Latter part of this, the elevator speech and kind of your experience summary. We've talked about this in a couple different webinars as well, but for those of us who are joining us for the first time, your elevator speech is basically a quick, call it 1 to 5 minute summary of who you are, what you're seeking, the key competencies that you have or things that you bring to the table as a professional, and then any key experiences or accomplishments that you've had throughout your career. So in the event that you're recently certified in Google data analytics or something like that, you could say, hey, I'm a young data analytics or a newer data analytics professional, taking the time to learn a little bit more about the space, trying to understand more about entry-level data analytics roles, Recently, I did complete the Google Data Analytics certificate, and I have really discovered my passion for cleaning and analyzing data and making sure that it's presentable for stakeholders and helping companies make data-driven decisions. It's a great example of an elevator speech that's like very short, very sweet, to the point, helps a person get an understanding of who you are, what you're looking for, and more to the point, what you gained proficiency with most recently. And so, as we talk about elevator pitches specifically, there's kind of a general structure that we recommend. I obviously just gave the example there, but the kind of key flow that you'll want to identify here is your introduction. So, who you are, of course, what you're seeking, what the conversation should consist of, and just kind of like sets the tone, right? Middle piece of this is more tied to your experience, so your past and present, anything that's relevant for the kind of career work that you're doing. In the example that I just gave, it would be like mentioning that you completed the Google Data Analytics certificate, and the key competencies that you outlined within those. And then, of course, last piece of this is future. If there are any specific career goals that you have, you can outline this here. Additionally, if you're talking to a person specifically, you can take the time to express interest in their specific role, the company itself, any programs that you might have noticed on their website, talking about those like returnships or apprenticeships earlier, making sure that the person has like a pretense of like, hey, this is maybe how I can help this person out. Of course, goals in the future don't necessarily have to be tied strictly to like what you can get out of that conversation. It can also be anything that specifically that you're interested in learning about, especially in a networking capacity. Let's say that you, and keeping with the trend of data analytics, let's say that you try to connect with somebody who's a little bit more senior in the space.
Ethan, I'm not exactly sure what's occurred, but we cannot hear you.
And back.
Okay, yes, you are. Can you start from the top? Because I noticed, but I didn't say anything because I thought maybe it might have been my Wi-Fi. So please start over for the purposes. Want to make sure no one missed anything.
Yes, of course. Um, and so sorry for that, everybody. You got to love a little bit of tech difficulties thrown in a live presentation. But yes, so elevator pitches specifically, general flow, and hopefully I'm not repeating myself too much, or I wasn't cutting in and out there. The general flow should follow your introduction, the past and present, so your relevant experience in the given context that you are speaking with someone in, and then the future. So it can be anything from your specific goals, what you're hoping to get out of the conversation, but it can also be a little bit more in the space of what you're interested in learning about. So for your introduction, you'll make sure that you highlight who you are, what you're seeking, and then of course you'll kind of tailor that to the person that you're speaking with. So the purpose of your conversation will vary a little bit based off of the details of the person that you're speaking with. You want to make sure you tailor that intro just a little bit based off of the context. Your past and present. So this would be where you highlight any relevant work experience, volunteer work, certificates that you've recently completed, keeping with the trend of data analytics that in that example that I provided just a little bit ago. You'll want to highlight, I recently completed the certificate. Here are some key skills and technologies that I learned in that, found a passion for working with these and the specific bit of work that was most interesting to me in that certificate. So just making sure you take the time to highlight what is most important to you, and what qualifies you kind of uniquely there. And then lastly, that future piece. So this is where you'll talk through kind of your career goals, what you're looking for, of course, in the event that there are specific initiatives. We talked a little bit about returnships and apprenticeships in the prior one, in the prior slide. This is where you can kind of touch on those specifically based on the context of who you're speaking with. And then lastly, anything that you might be interested in learning more about. So in a lot of contexts, especially in networking conversations, you might not be looking to get like a specific job outcome out of the conversation that you're looking or you're engaging in. You might be just looking to pick somebody's brain a little bit more about what the labor landscape looks like and what's kind of important for a professional to know in that space. Again, we'll keep with that analytics. Let's say you are talking to a more tenured professional, and you want to learn a little bit more about, now that you've completed the certificate, you want to learn a little bit more about how you can continue to build on those skills and grow those skills over time. It's a good chance that if you were to target a professional like that and have a great conversation with them, they'll be able to give you a little bit of guidance on how you can learn a little bit more about the technologies that are most relevant for use today. And then additionally, learn a little bit more about what core skills or projects show up really well when you're in an interviewing context. So just a couple different ways that you can take that future piece and spin it. But as far as structure goes, that intro, past, present, and then future is how you want to structure greater than 90% of all of those engagements. Some of it, there's like give and take based off context, but yeah, that's the general structure. As far as mistakes go for elevator pitch, and some of this gets tied to nerves as well. We'll kind of talk through that in a little bit more depth here in a second. As far as, call it too long or too short, it's very easy to give a quick 15-second like spiel about yourself, but a lot of times it doesn't give the other party enough information about what you are looking for or what you would like to do and how they can be a best resource for you. And so what this leads to a lot of time is the conversation being a little bit more transactional, like we've talked about previously, which you definitely want to avoid. So in that keeping, you'll want to try to keep it, I would say at a bare minimum 30, 45 seconds, but like comfortably a minute is great. And then from 1 to 3 minutes is ideal. If you go too far past that, you'll kind of just dance around the point, if that makes sense, of like what you're really looking for. And it sometimes gives the person too much information, so they won't be able to, again, be an effective resource for you because they can't really get a sense for, they maybe kind of got lost in the conversation a little bit and don't really know what you're looking for anymore. So 1 to 3 minutes, it's a great target zone. It can be a little bit shorter than a minute in the event that the conversation leads in that direction, but I wouldn't go too far past 3 minutes. Next thing here is being overly personal. So sharing information that is either unrelated or not helpful to the context that you're engaging with a person with. This specifically highlights the profession. In a lot of cases, when it comes to networking, it's not one-to-one like this. Like you might have conversations that are not strictly related to your professional experience, but those can also be very beneficial. So you'll read the room a little bit when it comes to this, but don't share things that are overly personal from the sense of they add nothing to the conversation. Not knowing your audience, so just not knowing to be prescriptive and again, read that room. If you're sharing things that are kind of out of scope or out of bounds for the conversation, maybe you are asking somebody that you just met for first time intimate details about their family situation, things like that. You don't want to do that. Next thing here, memorizing the speech. You'll want to make sure that you do have a general like memorization of the flow and that you're comfortable speaking through it. But if you memorize it to a T, a lot of times that comes off as robotic and just kind of staccato. So it's not a super helpful way of engaging in a conversation in a lot of cases. Last thing here is being too vague or not concise enough. You'll want to make sure that when you are delivering that elevator speech, it's delivered with intent and with purpose. We talked about purpose-driven a couple slides back now. It's important that the person, when you're setting the stage for the conversation, has a good sense for where you're at right now and where you're looking to go when it comes to a networking perspective from a job seeker arena. And so I think here we're going to talk a little bit of, about the career fair. Some key things to know. Obviously, we're having the career fair here on Thursday. It's a great opportunity to get in front of several organizations that we've partnered with directly. Great way to kind of get your foot in the door, have some great conversations, and leverage some of the tips that we've learned here today. You'll want to make sure that your profile is fully up to date before you head into that. So make sure you upload your certificates, your resume. A profile picture is also really helpful. Again, helps people to put faces to names in a lot of cases and helps them to just kind of stick out in your mind, so to speak. Personal information, very helpful, but especially for in online networking events because it gives them the ability to contact you back. City, state, phone number, like your geographic location and contact information is really all you need here. Everybody is great with sharing their LinkedIn. I saw that popping in the chat here just a little bit ago. Make sure that you include that link in your virtual career fair profile as well. Great way to stay in touch with the people that you meet with. And then your nice to haves, job alerts, very, very helpful, of course, makes it so that you don't have to be so active in the job seeking and that those jobs come to you over time. Employment preferences helps people to know, what you're looking for and the best way to, or the best opportunities to get in front of you. And then, of course, your compensation preferences, totally optional, but again, can make it so that they don't feel like they're wasting your time with an opportunity that isn't in what you're looking for.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing what you've shared with us thus far. And so we are so excited to have you in these last 5 minutes to do as many questions as possible in these last 5 minutes. All right, so we're going to go speed round. Question number one. I had built a decent rapport with someone through Zoom call, engaged with a couple of their posts, and they agreed to refer me. It took me about a week to overcome the imposter syndrome to apply. What are some ways to recover that relationship?
That's a great, thank you for being vulnerable and transparent and sharing that experience because it's definitely something that happens to a lot of job seekers, especially when it comes to that imposter syndrome. It's a very difficult thing to navigate in a lot of cases. Um, Repairing that relationship generally starts with just being open and honest, just letting them know that you were struggling personally, the same way that you felt comfortable sharing with us here today. It's just a great policy to share that directly with the person as well, because more often than not, they will be understanding and give you, benefit of the doubt, so to speak. It happens to everybody, right? Especially if you are a more junior professional in the space. It takes time. Ways to navigate that and hopefully make it a little bit easier for you in the future is just engage in consistent dialogue with your connection, just to talk through the job description. Do you feel like that might be a deal breaker? Things like that to help you overcome that imposter syndrome, and more to the point, make the connection feel like they're helping you out as that next step of your career. But as far as repairing that, just being open and honest the way that you just were with us is a great first step. And I'm fairly confident that they would be very understanding and willing to continue working with you.
Great advice. Question number two. I have been off the market for 15 years. I'm now in my 50s, and after completing the Google cybersecurity certificate, I want to get back. It seems hard to even get a response. Any thoughts?
It is. That's a great. Again, it's emblematic of a lot of circumstances that we see of the population we work with. I will say things change very dramatically. Just the insight, just the ability to complete a certificate is very, very helpful and important, and makes it so that they have an understanding that you are keeping your skill set up to date and that you've recently obtained this as well. I would encourage starting with groups, and especially like meeting with peers, things like that, who have recently completed that certificate. It's very helpful to get in with circles of people who are also like starting from ground zero with you, mostly because they can also, as opportunities come up and there are additional like openings on their teams, they can kind of refer you. So making connections with your peers that have recently completed is a great first step. And then as far as continued networking advice, I think especially in the space of cyber, there are a lot of resources, a lot of online spaces between LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., where you can network with people who have a wealth of experience and knowledge. YouTube is a great example where you have a little bit more access to people than you might otherwise. I would encourage you to check out some of those resources and try to connect with those people who are maybe more influencers, just to get a greater understanding of what is required or expected of someone who is returning to the workforce in the capacity that you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you are not a LinkedIn premium user, how can you send a message to a person without putting a comment out there for everyone to see?
It's a great question. It's kind of dependent on, to some extent, right? Like LinkedIn is LinkedIn. There are limitations to what you can do in the event that you don't, if they are not, open to receiving new messages at a given point in time. Commenting is a good way to get around that. But the other way that you can get around that is in the event that they have listed any level of contact information on their LinkedIn profile. It means that they are open to receiving communications for people who have found their LinkedIn. So feel free to leverage those directly. And then beyond the scope of that, it is a bit more of a difficult set of circumstances in the event that they have indicated that they don't want to receive, any kind of connection requests or things like that. But the best rule of thumb is to keep an eye out on either their social presence or any other avenues that they are using to kind of get their voice out there, and see if there are alternate modes of communication. Could be other social media networks, i.e. a Facebook or a Twitter or something like that, where you can engage with them a little bit more directly, or they may have a presence on a related professional forum. So just keep an eye out for that, see if there's anything that they've shared that would be in alignment there.
Absolutely. Next question, last question. What is your opinion on cold messaging a hiring manager after you have applied for a job at his or her company?
Good question. It is not strictly, I would say, it's not strictly frowned upon. I wouldn't expect great results, and it really is dependent on the context. In a lot of cases, the best case scenario is that you do get connected with them and just have a conversation. Um, the conversation doesn't necessarily have to be about that job. It's a win if they accept the connection and then like just have a dialogue with you. Um, I don't think it's not frowned upon necessarily is the short answer. I would say it's in the event that you are able to find them after you've applied to the position and you send them a connection request, and you are genuinely interested and invested in maintaining a connection with them and possibly either learning more about the position or learning more about the company or learning more about their professional journey. That's where you'll find much greater results. You don't want to just network with them for the sake of trying to learn more about what you've applied to. You want to network with them to maintain the connection over time. And people are very sensitive to that kind of thing. So in the event that they feel like they might be being used or, to whatever lens like that, it's where context and being sensitive to that context plays in very heavily.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Please stay until the end. I have some important information. We'll be sending you a post event email, which will include a recording as well as all of the resources we spoke about today. You can access our event survey by using the QR code earlier in the presentation or by locating it in the email. We'll be doing a raffle with all respondents, and one of you will win a Career Circle tote bag. Make sure to like and follow us on our socials to stay up to date on all platform updates. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all leave here today feeling empowered and ready to build your network with confidence. We've had so much fun on today. Please join us for our virtual career fair that's happening this Thursday, July 17th from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as our next webinar that's to be held on Thursday, August the 14th from 1 p.m. until 2 p.m. as well, Eastern Standard Time. You can view all events and register on careercircle.com/events. Again, we want to thank you so much for your time. I'll be putting my LinkedIn in the chat as well. Ethan, I encourage you to do the same. You all take this opportunity to be able to connect with you all. Until next time, everyone. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.